Great. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We really appreciate it. I think I know everybody, but I'm Sharon Goodson at the Leech Tag Foundation and Impact Cubed. And welcome to what should be a really nice conversation about with community-centric fundraising and really centering your values in fundraising. One thing that I always talk about so much is just the fact that fundraising is really hard, and maybe that doesn't sound very politically good to say because it's what I do a lot of my time, but I find that, it's really hard until you really tap into the value of why you're doing it in the first place. And if I can remember that, then usually gets me through some hurdles myself. And I, from what I had seen of Chantal's presentation, which is really beautiful, I will tell you, you're in for a real treat. I think she's going to be approaching it similarly. So this workshop is one of a series that we have through San Diego Gives, and other organizations are, of course, always welcome to join. But we are recording, as you know, and we will send out the recording to everybody, as well as a copy of Chantal's slides, either later today or tomorrow, but you'll get it soon enough. And let's see. Okay, so now I just want to introduce Chantal, who I have met, but we have not had a chance to talk one-on-one, but it's so funny because I just hear from so many different people what a terrific presenter you are and how special your approach is. So Chantal Suarez Avila is the principal consultant and founder of Mas Aya Consulting Firm, which, as will be our conversation today, really centers values, really puts those very prominently in her work with nonprofit organizations. And I love what you have on your website, where the top 5 values that you use in approaching your work are curiosity, caring, collaboration, creativity, and commitment. And I just thought those are really neat and each very inspiring. And I haven't seen many people do that, so that's very cool. Chantal's been doing this work for at least the last 12 years, maybe even longer. She's originally from Chicago, but now she's here in Escondido, and really focuses quite a bit on serving BIPOC organizations and I think a lot of the grassroots organizations. I know that you just gave a workshop with the community-centric fundraising folks within the last few weeks, I think, and they all said that that was fabulous. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to you. I will still monitor the chat for anybody who if you have anything to mention, and this I think will be really informal also, because we don't have that many folks with us, but we'll go from there. So thank you so much, Chantal.
Thanks, Sharon. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see some of your faces. I know sometimes virtual sessions can be a little challenging. I just want to, right off the bat, say that this session is going to be super conversational. We have some time for self-reflection as well, because I know some of us lean a little introverted when we're sharing our ideas, but really want to make this a conversation. So I just want to set the tone and just let you know we're here to be in conversation, and just excited to be with you all. Thanks again, Sharon. So let's get started because I want to get you out on time. So today's session is all about energizing your fundraising by anchoring your values and boosting abundance. And I'll tell you a little bit more about community-centric fundraising throughout the presentation in case you haven't heard about it, but super, super excited to be here. We love to say that we create a lot of our work with love, and it's true. So just want to elevate that, and I hope that you feel that today. Here we go. So for today's agenda, I want to do some introduction so we can get to know each other. Maybe y'all, know each other, but I want to get to know you. We want to cover about community-centric fundraising. For some of you, that might be a new framework, a new concept. For some of you, you might have already heard of it. Let's talk about it. Let's ground ourselves on some of the principles that they've shared with us so far. I'll give you a case study of how folks are practicing community-centric fundraising and bringing it back to your values. So thinking about some of the values that are guiding your own fundraising, whether consciously or unconsciously, lifting that up so that you can bring it back into your fundraising strategies. Like Sharon said, fundraising is super hard. And so I think anchoring ourselves in why we do what we do is going to be extremely important to keep ourselves energized and have sort of a long-term thinking with our work, right? So that's for our agenda today. I'll have a 5-minute break as well. So, in case we need a little like energizer break, we'll make sure to have that. But for today's objectives, we love to share a version of this slide. We think that in these conversations, we hope that you come out of this feeling replenished, renewed, and re-energized, even just a little bit. A little bit goes a long way because this work is hard, and we fundamentally believe that if we keep ourselves energized, it does wonders for ourselves, our teams, and our communities, right? But some of our objectives are increase our understanding of community-centric fundraising, elevate the collective wisdom in the room. So many of you have tons of experience working with your teams and organizations. I want to elevate that during our session. So, don't be shy about sharing sort of your ideas on what has worked, what hasn't worked, so that we can all learn from each other. And then lastly, of course, is discuss how we can resource our work using our values and centering our communities. You might be already doing that. And so maybe part of this conversation is getting ideas from other peers on how you can do that even more, strengthen those sort of initiatives within our fundraising. And then lastly, we have this illustration from Ellie Mejia, who's a Chicago artist, and I love it. So I have to give Ellie some recognition here. Says the work of justice must always be rooted in love. And that's a big North Star for us. When we talk about fundraising, we think of it as a way as a pathway towards justice, but also a way to express our love for each other and our humanity.
Chantal.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
Sure.
we were just wondering, should we be seeing the slides yet, or was it?
Oh, sorry. I thought I
Yep.
was sharing my
No,
slides.
thank you,
Thank you for
Kelly.
asking.
Yeah.
Yes, let's see these slides. All right. So here's this beautiful illustration that I was telling you about. So yeah, hoping that you're feeling replenished, renewed, and re-energized throughout this conversation. So a little bit about Más Allá before we get started. Más Allá is Spanish for beyond. We're a values-driven, community-centered fundraising consulting firm. We specifically work with organizations that identify as BIPOC serving, BIPOC leading, folks that are leading with their values, and folks who see justice as their North Star. And we're trying to practice how to resource our communities through regenerative strategies. And that is something fairly new to us, right? Like we're constantly learning and evolving on how we can do this work better. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about what that means later during our time together. But since Más Alla's public launch in February 2021, we've raised over $19 million. And we do this through this approach, more like grassroots, community-centered, and that can actually be sometimes like, again, a little challenging. And so we feel very proud of being able to secure funds for our communities in this way. And we've been able to work with over 43 leaders from over 7 states: Arizona, California, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Texas, and most recently, Washington. And so similar to y'all, we're growing as well. deepening sort of like our understanding of fundraising and how we practice, and then of course sharing that with our partners across the US. So again, I'm Chantal. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm originally from Chicago. I live in Escondido now, and so grateful to now like be in community with folks in San Diego. My colleague Maria Rene might join us later today, and so in case you see her join us. But Maria Rene is originally from Guatemala. She lives in Austin, Texas now, and so she gets to work closely with our partners in Texas. And if you have thoughts, questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm just trying to get through our sort of getting to know a little bit about me and Masaya so that I can get to know more about you. So, right, we're talking about values in our fundraising. So I wanted to make sure I shared Masaya's values with y'all so you can kind of see like what is leading us in our work. And maybe you see some values that you currently are practicing or recognize organizationally. So for us, we say that we believe in resourcing our communities with care. So care being one of our sort of most important values. And so that could mean so many things, right? Care could be like internally the type of policies and practices we're trying to practice. It's also how we're in relationship with our partners across the US, wanting to be thoughtful and supportive and reflective. We also we also value mutuality. So as much as we're sharing information, insights, wisdom, best practices with y'all, we want to also learn from you. And so we very much value mutuality in our partnerships. And then lastly, of course, abundance. You might have noticed that in our workshop title, the word abundance was included, and that's on purpose. So, going back to feeling energized about fundraising, especially because it's hard, we truly believe the mentality of feeling abundant is going to help us not only in the short term, but long term as we grow our organizations. So just a couple of, these are the values we lead with, but maybe it gets you kind of thinking about some of the values y'all are leading with in your fundraising. Okay, community agreements. So these community agreements are actually from our friends here at San Diego Food System Alliance. I share this because I think it's just a beautiful visual of like the type of agreements we might want to use during today's conversation. So maybe just take a moment, read through them. And if y'all feel like, oh yes, I really want to try this agreement during this session today, either, unmute yourself or put it in the chat because I want to actually document our own agreements that we create together.
I'll chime in really quick, Chantel. This is Carlos Medina with the Chicana Federation, and the one that stands out to me is both and. Also, sometimes thinking like yes and, because sometimes it can be easy to say yes, but I realize I'm putting one in conflict with the other rather than presenting them both as opportunities to explore.
Thank you, Carlos. Nice to hear your voice. But yes, okay, both and maybe we try that. Anyone else? Is anything else calling y'all? Like, oh, yes, I'm feeling like this today.
I like the understand the difference between intent and impact. That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Understand the difference between intent and impact. Perfect. And then is there one more maybe we'd like to experiment with?
I like try it on, step outside your comfort zone, because I think it's very easy for us all to kind of do the same fundraising techniques day in and day out.
Yes, okay, perfect. So try it on. Okay, thank you so much. Well, if it's all right with y'all, maybe we can practice these agreements, both and understand the difference between intent and impact and try it on. Does that feel good? Maybe just a thumbs up. If there's something else that you're like, I really want to add this, let us know. We'll add it to our time together. Okay, thank you, y'all. Wonderful. Okay, so now handing it back to y'all. If you can share, if you want to go, if you can go off mute and share your name, pronouns, maybe one word that's describing how you're feeling right now, and tell us what brought you to your organization, right? So we started with like, why are we doing anything and how important that is for our fundraising. So maybe like kind of thinking about that. So tell us what brought you to your organization. Since there's a few of us, maybe we can keep our responses to like a minute or so, but as a way to kind of get to know each other, if that's all right with y'all. I'm actually going to stop sharing and then put the prompt in our chat so that we can all see each other. So yeah, again, your name, pronouns, one word to describe how you're feeling right now, and then tell us what brought you to your organization.
I can start if you want.
Thank
Hi
you.
guys, my name is Kelly Peters. I am the VP of Community Impact at Rancho Coastal Humane Society. One word that I'm feeling right now is open. I feel like I really need to kind of broaden my horizons and be open to new ideas. And if someone asks me to try something, I'll pretty much say yes. So really excited to see what I can grab from this talk today. And what brought me to Rancho Coastal Humane Society, I actually started volunteering about 13 years ago, then came on board 12 years ago. And then I left for a short period of time to join the corporate world about a year and a half ago. And although I loved the experience, my heart and my passion has always been in nonprofit period, but especially the Humane Society and animals. So very excited to be here. We all have such great causes to support and fundraise for. So excited to learn what you have to share, Chantal. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
I'm happy to jump. Oh, please.
Okay, I'll go fast. So, my name is Lisa Lindgren. I'm a she, hers, her, all those. I'm feeling curious. And so I am the new general manager for the Senior Gleaners of San Diego County, which rescues produce from orchards, backyards, and grocery stores to get into our food supply. I've only been there a couple of weeks. I'm still learning what I'm doing. So, and I want to say, I have to apologize in advance because I only have a little time today, and I'm looking forward to getting the recording. So I wanted to be here to start, and thank you in advance for all the good information you're providing us.
Thank you, Lisa. Do you want to go for it, Carlos?
Sure. And Lisa, thank you for joining us. Happy you can be here with us. My name is Carlos Medina, pronouns he, him. And I'm not sure if this is an adjective, but I'm juggling right now. And so whatever adjectives go along with that, just taking a lot of deep breaths and knowing that this too shall pass. And I'm working at the Chicana Federation of San Diego County, managing the grants. And what brought me to this organization was actually a friend of mine who recommended the position, and I explored the opportunity. And here we are a year later, and I am thrilled and so thankful for that friend. So really lean into your community, folks, because it will be your saving grace.
Thank you, Carlos.
I'll go next, if that's okay. My name is Cesar Trejo, pronouns he, him. I've been at Interfaith Community Services in Escondido for almost 10 years now. And I never thought I'd be in the nonprofit work. I always thought I'd be doing retail. My aspirations were to become like a store manager. I really liked that. I had been working retail since I was 16. But life, gives you curveballs, and here we are. One word to describe my mood is, I think right now, excited. Or I guess more than excited, grateful. Grateful for the opportunity to learn from great people. And at my organization, I'm getting great opportunities to learn, to promote myself, to advance in the world of development and philanthropy. So yeah, just grateful to be able to do that and join you guys today as well for a great conversation.
Thank you, Cesar. Let me read Monica Emery's in the chat, and while the next one comes joins. So Monica, right? Monica Emery, pronouns she, her, the executive director or the ED Center for World Music. Their word is open. I came to the Center for World Music because I believe culturally rich music and dance is a vehicle for peace building among people. Thank you, Monica. Beautiful.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly. I'm the program manager at Mariposa Clubhouse, which is a program of Turn Behavioral Health. I got into my role because I'm passionate about helping break the stigma of mental health. And I'm really open. Fundraising is something new for us because we are county funded. So I'm just really excited to get into this world and find new funding streams to expand the opportunities for our participants.
Thank you, Kelly.
Hi there, my name is Miriam, she, her. My word is anxious because I am currently unemployed. I come from the corporate world and am trying to make the transition now into the nonprofit world. And so here I am.
Aw, I hear you. I feel you, Miriam. But yes, we're your community. Let us know however we can support you, after today.
Thank you.
All
I
right,
can-
who's
oh,
next? Yeah.
I was gonna say, I could go, we have a couple people, and like Drew also put in the chat, we have a couple people who were needing to join by, that way. So I don't know if you wanna, we can read his if you want.
Oh, perfect. Okay, yes, I'm seeing Drew. Drew Keski, development and I might be mispronouncing your name, so I apologize in advance. Development at Solana Center, pronouns are he, him, his. I'm feeling so grateful as well right now too. Being able to work with people who care brought me to my current organization. Beautiful. Thank you, Drew. All right, who do we have left?
I'll go.
Go for it.
Hi, my name is Darlene Platt, and I work with the Live Love Foundation of Salvation, which is a private nonprofit. And I started out working for a defense contractor, and her and her husband opened up a nonprofit and transferred me over there from their corporation. And I've been here 6 years now, and I do everything. I'm the only one. We used to have 2 of us, but she left last year. And so it's just me. And I don't do a lot of fundraising right now. We're pretty privately funded, but we're going to start a lot of fundraising, and I'm going to have to do it in Texas because they've moved all of their corporate business from California to Texas, and they've bought a 40-acre ranch, and they want to turn it into an oasis. So we've already designed the property with little houses and a community center and gardens and things like that. So we're just starting to do that. So I have a feeling my boss wants me to travel more to Texas. So I have a feeling I'm going to be going there in this little town. And I had suggested to her just recently to find some, like community centers or find any kind of fairs going on. And we could set up a booth and do fundraising that way, because this endeavor that we're doing is quite expensive. So we're going to start doing that. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Because I really need some brushing up on my community fundraising.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, Darlene. And yeah, good energies for this transition period and large project coming up. I thought I saw Jose going off on mute. Do you want to go next, Jose?
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Jose Lopez. My pronouns are he, him, and I am the advancement coordinator at A Reason to Survive. We're a nonprofit here in National City, and we serve the community in the South Bay. One word that describes my feeling right now is exploration. I'm pretty new to the world of advancement and fundraising. I've been in my current role for about 4 months now. So far, everything's new to me. So I'm like looking to try on new hats and just see where advancement takes me. But yeah, I landed here at Arts as an internship. Originally, I was in the gallery and a gallery intern, and I ended up being onboarded into programs and operations. And again, now in my current role of advancement. So excited to kind of get to know everyone and like everyone's tips and tricks for this kind of work.
Thank you, Jose. Yes, let's
Thank you.
explore. And I see April also added in the chat. Thank you, April. April's at Integrated Perspectives Consulting, excited, started integrated perspectives to help nonprofits and organizations with organizational development. And also April also co-chairs the Oceanside Chambers Nonprofit Committee. Always excited to learn more about how I can help. Thank you, April, for joining us. Samantha says, Samantha's pronouns are she, her. Samantha's a database specialist at San Diego Botanic Garden. My word is sponge. I came to the garden because I was inspired by the mission and I want to learn all I can. Oh, that's beautiful. Let me see. Did we get everyone? I don't know if, oh, Marcy, here you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I've been having a lot of audio problems lately. Marcy Roque, I'm the president of Travelers Aid Society of San Diego. We are a 123-year-old organization. Oh, my pronouns are she, hers. The first word that I thought of to describe how I'm feeling is overwhelmed because it's the end of our fiscal year. But I also, the word open resonated with me too, because it is the beginning of a new fiscal year. And so I hope to be open to new opportunities and ideas for the coming year. What brought me to the organization? Gosh, I've been here for 18 years, so it's hard to remember, but I think after many years in advertising and publishing, it felt good to work for an organization that is doing good in the community, and we help a lot of people. So that's what brought me.
Thank you, Marcy. Did we get everyone? I think so. Sharon, did you want to add yours? I know like sometimes we're hosting, but it's still nice for people to hear.
Sure. No, thank you, everybody. It's so nice to hear these comments. Sharon Goodson, my pronouns are she, her, hers. Let's see, my word is probably like good. I don't know, vitality. I've had this bad cold and I'm feeling much better today. So I really appreciate my vitality. I think that's the, piece. And then, and I came to the Leech Tag Foundation because of all the possibilities. It's a really interesting, creative place to work. And it's proven that way. I've been able to do a lot of really neat things that might not have done at another foundation. Like this stuff. Yeah.
Thank you, Sharon. And my colleague did join. She's listening. Maria Rene, I don't know if you are able to share just so that folks can hear your voice for a moment.
Yes, hi everyone. Nice meeting you. And my name is Maria Rene Morales. My pronouns are she, ella. And yes, I'm feeling excited to get to know all of you and for you to see this training. Yeah, so thank you for having me.
Thanks, Maria Rene. Okay, so now that we've gotten to know each other just a little bit, I'm excited to explore your openness, explore with y'all, feeling excited. There's a lot of feelings obviously that we're feeling, including some like overwhelm and some like we're juggling and okay, right? There's a lot of feelings in the room, so like let's be mindful of all of these things. But let me go back into our presentation. Here we go. Just want to say, let's just ground ourselves in these truths, right? Like the reason why we're at our organizations, like, sometimes when it gets tough, we just have to ground ourselves in these truths sometimes. Okay. So a little bit about Masaya's approach to fundraising, and what other terms for fundraising, depending on how you do it, are like resourcing, resource organizing, resource mobilizing. And so I just want to also like credit that these are other terms that we use. But for simplicity, we say our fundraising approach, right? And our fundraising approach is grounded in some of the things that you see here. So one, reflection, we're big on taking the time to reflect on our experiences, sort of our ideas, our projects, right? Reflection feeling extremely important to prioritize so that we can do better by ourselves and our community, right? Acknowledgement, sometimes that means just acknowledgement of our history, whether it be organizational, it could be the entire sector. It could be just like acknowledging some of the practices happening at our organization, but acknowledgement being a big part of like beyond reflection, acknowledging and being in conversation about what we're experiencing. A big one is learning, right? Like we call ourselves just like we're always wanting to learn from others, so that we could do better, right? As so many of you also share, like you're here to like learn a few more things so that you can incorporate into your fundraising. So we join you in the learning, in learning with you. Sometimes, right, like some of the practices that we've had has created some harm within our teams, within our organizations, and sometimes the sector, right? And so we're exploring, so again, to be fully transparent, is like, where does apology and repair fit into our approach? And so again, being super transparent, these are areas that we want to explore, because the reality is like nothing is perfect, right? Like there's good, bad, and everything in between. And we want to be able to acknowledge sometimes even the harms, unintended or not, right? So that we could do better. Again, like this idea of just like doing better by each other, and while anchoring our values and moving into our missions. In, of course, the reflection, acknowledging, learning, apology, repair, we hope to be able to change some sort of behavior, right? Whether it's just like at the individual level or our belief systems, maybe there's a small shift that we can make there. Maybe that's an entire team or organizational shift that we're trying to do, because we really believe like changing our behaviors to better anchor our values, to better is what is going to help this entire sector grow towards justice and do it with love, right? And so at the end of the day, we do have to make shifts if we want to be able to collectively work towards justice, right? And then lastly, care, right? I mentioned to you earlier, care is a big value of ours, and we want to have these conversations with care. Sometimes it can be hard to have challenging conversations, but we hope to do it with care. When we're doing something new and innovative, right? It can get really, sometimes we get very excited and our sense of urgency starts to kick in. But like this moment of like taking it back and like, okay, how do we still take care of ourselves in the process? And so, just wanting to acknowledge, this is a cyclical process. Sometimes we're in a place of like maybe more reflection than anything else. And so just honoring that, right? Okay, so now moving on to community-centric fundraising. And this is where I'm gonna need your help. Maybe you can do like raise your hand, I don't know, just like something to like, so I can see. Have y'all heard it? Has anyone heard of this framework? Raise your hand, however I can see, just so that I have a better idea. Okay. Awesome. Okay. I think my fellow colleague Carlos here has, we're part of the community-centric fundraising in San Diego. Oh, Sharon and Kelly and Marcy, I missed a few. Sometimes there's a delay, right? But wonderful. But it seems like some of us know about community-centric fundraising. Others are maybe going to learn about community-centric fundraising today. Either way, I hope that this conversation just expands the information you already know or don't know. So community-centric fundraising is a movement to evolve how fundraising is done in the nonprofit sector. Its goal is to support fundraisers and other nonprofit professionals to re-examine every fundraising philosophy and practice they have been taught, engage in vigorous ongoing conversations, and explore doing fundraising in ways that reduce harm and further social justice. And then I end with, why is CCF important anyway? So, I don't know. I don't know about y'all. I hear some of you have just started fundraising or, are now going to be responsible for fundraising. And so, like anything, right, there's always been a way of doing things in the nonprofit sector. And so the way for me, community-centric fundraising has been a sort of evolution of when I entered fundraising in the nonprofit sector, sort of the term, and I think today it's still being used, donor-centric fundraising. And I don't even know if y'all have heard that term or not, but this was a framework that helped fundraisers kind of learn how to be in relationship with people to help bring in resources, right? And generally with donor-centric fundraising, there's a big emphasis on like, how do we ensure donors are cultivated, a big emphasis on the donor themselves. Okay, so as you can imagine, right, like anything, we constantly evolve. When folks created community-centric fundraising, they wanted to reevaluate sort of that emphasis on the relationship and wanting to sort of honor the communities that we're serving through our missions and visions. Donors, of course, are incredibly important to how we resource the work, but bringing the emphasis back to community, so that community's voices, needs, priorities are the North Star of why we do anything. And then for us, of course, it's about justice. So community and justice is like our North Star. And I don't know, right? Depending on everyone has different fundraising experiences. This idea of like, how can we reduce harm and further social justice? That's part of this sort of community-centric fundraising conversation and how we're going to change our practices to be able to do that. I can just share my own experience. I think for me, when ways that I experience harm, which, honestly, like as a fundraiser, when I first started, I think for me, it was when you're working with organizations that have a lot of need, right? And like maybe, and we have a practice or culture of like working a ton to ensure like communities' needs are being met. And what does that mean for fundraising? That you carry the sense of like, at least for me, right? I'm speaking for myself, the sense of responsibility of bringing in funding, compromising my own well-being in the process. And at the time for me, I'm just like, wow, I had to manage from, government grants to also working with private foundations and individual donors. And again, those are practices that we can evaluate, right? But for me at the time, I felt like it was a lot of work. I was working a lot, trying to like bring in community. And then, these are the conversations I think we're still having, right? Because like, I think in the US, we're generally like have a very like workaholic culture. And it's like just like slowing it down, right? Slowing it down, because at the end of the day, if I'm not well, right, like our portfolio around funding also gets impacted. But more on harms later. I just want to be able to introduce community-centric fundraising. For me, why it spoke to me was because I was very justice oriented, and the way that I was taught to do fundraising didn't feel justice oriented. So when I saw this framework, it resonated with me. Let me show you the 10 principles that community-centric fundraising is founded on, just to kind of help you kind of get to know the framework a little better. And maybe I can actually get some volunteers to help read each of the principles so we can hear more voices in the room. So maybe starting with principle 1, if someone can volunteer to read that out loud.
I can read it. Fundraising must be grounded in race, equity, and social justice.
Thank you, Kelly. Principle 2.
I'll go. Individual organizational missions are not as important as the collective community.
I like the next one. I'll do it. Nonprofits are generous with and mutually supportive of one another.
All who engage in strengthening the community are equally valued, whether volunteer, staff, donor, or board member.
Time is valued equally as money.
We treat donors as partners, and this means that we are transparent and occasionally have difficult conversations.
We foster a sense of belonging, not othering.
We promote the understanding that everyone, donors, staff, funders, board members, volunteers, personally benefits from engaging in the work of social justice, not just the charity and compassion.
We see the work of social justice as holistic and transformative, not transactional.
We recognize that healing and liberation requires a commitment to economic justice.
Thank you for closing us, Kelly.
Yeah.
So yeah, these are the 10 principles at Community-Centric Fundraising. And here's a link. If you just go, you can learn more about community-centricfundraising.org. It's a wonderful resource. It has a blog. It has chapters throughout the United States. There's one here in San Diego. Carlos and I are very active in it. I'm actually a co-coordinator right now of the chapter. And there's so many of us who are interested in how to practice this way of fundraising. So think of it as if you're open, you're curious and wanting to explore it, this is a great space to be able to do that. But yeah, if maybe just to get a couple more voices in, now that you've heard these 10 principles, is there one principle that is like calling you? Is there one that you're like, oh, I'm not sure what that means? Or, let's just open it up to some generals, like first impressions after you've heard these 10 principles.
I really like number 3. I think that that's obviously why a lot of us are here as well. And with Fundraising Fridays that Sharon puts on, we all can learn so much from one another, which is huge. And, just an example, we're putting on a pickleball tournament in August. But we are supporting another nonprofit group, actually 2 other nonprofit groups with their pickleball tournaments, even though one of them is also animal welfare related. So I think it's just a great reminder that we don't need to be siloed. There's, plenty of donors to go around and ability to support and learn from each other. So that's what's brought me here today.
Thank you, Kelly, and thanks for sharing that example. As again, these principles are a guide, and I know that so many of us are already practicing this. So thank you for even sharing an example. I just started learning how to play pickleball, so I actually want information on your event. So that seems really exciting.
Amazing. Thanks, Chantel.
Anyone else who was like, oh, this principle is really standing out? Or just any, just curiosities, questions that you might have.
I actually really liked number 7. We foster a sense of belonging, not othering. My background is actually in human resources. And so part of my job through my career has been fostering a place of inclusion and not exclusion. To me, that one just stood out the most because that's, I guess, how I operate myself as well.
Yes. And I will be again, in the spirit of being honest, right? And sometimes having challenging conversation. I mean, I'll say it, sometimes that feels really hard to also practice, right? Practicing a sense of belonging and not othering, especially when there's a lot of things that are very complicated, that can be very harmful to our society. But creating spaces where we can acknowledge, right? Going back to repair and just collaborate and work in with a spirit of love. And so I just want to say, yes, I'm committed to it. And yes, it also sometimes feels hard, right? The community agreement that we're lifting up, right? Anyone else?
One that you kind of touched on earlier, Chantel, that stands out to me is number 6 in terms of having those difficult, transparent conversations. And I think for me, it's just an opportunity to reflect on my own lived experience. How was potentially conflict role modeled for me, and how does that maybe prevent me from wanting to have those difficult conversations so that I have a starting point to start to grow and reflect on.
Completely. Yeah, and it's I don't know. We treat donors as partners, and this means that we are transparent and occasionally have difficult conversations. Yeah, I mean, our relationship to conflict, right? Like, I love what you're thinking about, Carlos, is like, oh, well, how can I do this? And also what's contributing to like maybe potential hesitation to do this at all or do it better, right? And I think going back to like Masaya's approach of like taking the time to reflect so that we can be in these conversations, because oftentimes they're needed, right? They're needed. We need to be able to speak openly about how we can do better by one another and our collective missions and visions. Okay, so if there's no one else that wants to chime in, I want to talk about a case study where folks are practicing community-centric fundraising in action. But before we move on, is that true? Anyone else want to chime in before we move on? Okay, I think we're okay, right, Sharon? I'm not seeing the chat right now. All right, so, oops. So sometimes folks are like, give me 1 second. Trying to get to my next slide. Here we go. All right, here we go. So sometimes when folks are like, can you give me some examples on community-centric fundraising? I feel like I'm already doing it. And so this is a way for us to kind of talk about community-centric fundraising in action. No worries, Lisa, we got you. It's being recorded. So we'll see you soon. Here's a case study from one of our partners out of the Chicagoland area. They're called Cicero Independiente. They're locally led and bilingual news outlet. And we've been working with them for the past 3 years on their end of year giving campaigns. And we want to highlight some of the ways that they're practicing community-centric fundraising, the principles, some of their own ideas and values into their fundraising to kind of like spark some ideas for your strategies in the future. Last year, we in every sort of end of year giving campaign, we always create a theme to each campaign. And the theme generally kind of reflects what the team, the organization has experienced that year to be able to communicate that out to their audience. Their audience is on email, right? On social media, and then of course in person. And so I say that because, right, when we talk about like, how do we communicate our efforts at end of year, we have to understand too where our people are at, right? So that we can target communications that are going to be most effective to them. So last year, our campaign theme was De uno comen cuatro, or from one, many eat. And the idea was they wanted to lift up the immense generosity that they experienced in 2023 from their community members. So generosity being the value they especially wanted to elevate. Last year, we did our traditional sort of series of emails. I think maybe we sent anywhere between 10 and 12 emails between October and end of the year, accompanied by social media posts for Instagram, Facebook, and did it both in English and Spanish, right? So going back to like, when we're talking to our people, what's the best way to communicate with them? Well, we have to know quite a bit about our audience so that our messages are effective and that people are actually seeing them, reading them, hearing them, etc., right? Some of the achievements that we experienced together was one, right, going back to the value. So, sometimes you ask yourself, well, how do I anchor myself in a value that I want to practice? Like when you're planning your next campaign, part of your planning should include what value you want to anchor yourself in. As simple as that, right? Sometimes we kind of forget to just like, it gets very simple. However, sometimes it feels like we have to move along a little quicker than we'd like to. But some of the values they name, going back to generosity, transparency, as you can imagine, being a news outlet and how they communicate information, right? Transparency. And co-creation. Co-creation just from how they write their stories as a newspaper, news outlet, to then of course co-creating an entire campaign with our team at Masaya, but these lovely people that you see here, which they don't, Cicero Independiente is fiscally sponsored. They don't have a board of directors, so they rely very much on the community members to help them with everything, all sort of their organizational needs, including fundraising. So they created a fundraising committee. So you see a few of them here. And we were able to secure some matches, right? We can talk about like strategies on like how to elevate your campaigns, maximize your labor and time. Like I mentioned, they created a fundraising committee because at the end of the day, this takes a lot of time and effort depending on your fundraising goals. And so you do need people power, right? At the end of the day, like we need people to be aware of our work, to be engaged with our work, and to support our work, right? We planned an in-person event, and in that event, they wanted to elevate their network of artists and entrepreneurs in the community. So, I think, Kelly, you said that, you're planning an event and trying to partner with other organizations, right? Like that's another way to practice some of these principles that we just saw. And what honestly even surprised us, because again, we learn from you as much as you learn from us. The funds raised from that event, they shared it with 2 of their community partners. And we were like, wow, we're a little blown away. Like, that's amazing. Talk about like this value of generosity, right? Like that is like showcasing to your community that like you are trying to live into your values too, right? As you're fundraising. And then, just overall, in the past 3 years, we've been able to raise $130,000 using peer-to-peer fundraising campaigns. And that's a type of fundraising strategy. It just, you have to kind of figure out which strategy, which tactic would resonate with your team so that you can also find the type of successes that you're looking for. So I'll stop there in case you have any questions about maybe this sort of example or anything that you just heard.
I have a quick question, Chantel. So we've done this as well, where we've, partnered with community, other organizations. For this, though, in particular, you mentioned you shared the funds with 2 of the community partners. Were they community partners that had the same mission, or were they like completely different and came together to, support different areas?
Yeah, Kelly, good question. So yeah, I remember one of them was actually there. Maybe they don't use these words. I see them as like anchor community institutions. I remember one of them was a church and another one was a community center. And so these are places where I imagine maybe they had already done events, collaborations in the past. And so, I mean, folks with maybe different missions, but this shared vision of like, contributing to a community. Essentially, they had a shared community, maybe different vision, different mission, but shared vision. Does that make sense?
Yep, that does. Thank you.
Yeah. Do folks know what peer-to-peer fundraising is? I don't want to make any assumptions here. If you don't, let us know, and we're happy to elaborate for y'all.
I had a question specifically about that. So at my organization, we don't really rely heavily on peer-to-peer. So I'm just wondering, I'm trying to integrate that more going forward. What did that look like for you guys in the campaign? What'd you guys do? How did you find success with that? And if you can just elaborate on that,
Yeah,
please.
of course. So peer-to-peer has looked a little different in the past 3 years. So I'll first start with that. So peer-to-peer in their first year was we are going to, so again, what I'll also add is Cicero Independiente is like 5 years old, just to kind of give you an idea too of like their sort of maturity and kind of where they are. So the first year it was really like partnering with their funders on peer-to-peer fundraising. So it's talking to their funders like, hey, we're trying to do something. We have a match. So really, funders actually were part of their first peer-to-peer fundraising campaign with some volunteers. The volunteers helped with getting the word across numerous channels, right? So like there's folks that are helping bring in money and folks who are helping sort of like spread the word of the campaign, right? So volunteers were spreading the word of the campaign and on their socials, forwarding any emails that were a part of their campaign strategy, right? And so that was year one. Most recently in this last peer-to-peer, because this time they had a fundraising committee. Their fundraising committee drove a lot of their peer-to-peer fundraising. So, asking their fundraising committee, who, essentially creating a list of like, who do I know that I want to be involved with this campaign, with this organization, in the many ways that you can be involved, like beyond making a monetary donation. Like, do I know artists in my network, right? They had folks that did printmaking. They had a youth band perform, right? So like thinking about if we have an event, who's in my network that can help sort of make that engagement possible. So again, like beyond money, of course, money is going to be important, right? Like who you're going to reach out to for support, but also for the type of experiences that you're creating for your community, right? Who else was a part of it? So the community partners, right? Them too, they were going to be a part of that fundraising event. And so we asked them, can you share these fundraising emails to your network or these social media posts? And so treating them as partners and not just beneficiaries, right? Because we all have something to sort of benefit from when we're collaborating, right? But yeah, thank you so much for that question. Okay, so just so that we have some time for group discussion as well, I'm going to move on. But before we move on, I just want to take a moment and give you a minute to kind of review your mission, vision, and your values. So if you need to open up that website, go for it, because sometimes it's so hard to remember, right? Our mission, vision, and then your values. And if you don't have any values you've identified, just write a few that you feel like you're currently practicing, right? And then the next question I'd like for y'all to reflect on while you're going through your mission, vision, and values is what values are guiding your fundraising now? And are there any shifts that you'd like to make so that we can have a group discussion around those? And, if nothing comes to mind, that's okay. Like, right, this is the time to just kind of like brainstorm and explore together. No worries, Marcy. See you soon. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing so we can be in gallery mode. I put the prompt in our chat. Yeah, does anyone want to start us off with any values that are guiding their fundraising now?
one thing I can share, I'm not sure if it's necessarily a value, but just a sentiment that I'm feeling is a sense of urgency. And I'm definitely don't want to diminish that, but I also have to, for my own personal mental health, to put it in a sense, like in context. And once life is on the line, I'm okay. But I just have to, that's definitely one that I'm negotiating. And I think for me, is shifting more into an abundance mindset so that, yes, there are things that are coming up, but I also know that there's going to be sunshine and laughter when that's all over and other opportunities.
Yeah, no, thank you for being vulnerable too, Carlos. Like you're naming, like I feel like you're naming the value you want to live into and how potentially you might be able to practice that, right? So sort of kind of like the mindset we also need to like sort of like calm these like the real sense of urgency that we have, right? It's real. You know, I don't want to take that away. However, right, when we're thinking about our own mental health and our well-being, like what else can we do for ourselves to ensure that that we're okay, right? We're as important as our communities are, and that's the reality, right? Like we are part of the communities we serve. Anyone else?
I can share. And I'll kind of go the inverse of Carlos, where what's guiding me right now is patience. So I know that like Sharon said, fundraising is difficult. It's not easy. But I always remember, you know, if you put in the time, if you build your relationships, if you you know, connect with others and share your mission with a passion, that the rest will come. So that's what's guiding me right now. Oftentimes we want to, you know, see results day in and day out, and you know, why can't I get $1 million from every person I connect with? But you know, that's what guides me, the patience, the knowing that if I do what I need to do, if I steward individuals properly, if I live the values of my organization, and if I, you know, share the wonderful work that everyone at my agency does, that the results will come. So that's what's guiding me right now with my fundraising.
Oh my God, I really love that. I have a personal story because I'm learning how to garden in California. I feel like I'm getting so many life lessons from gardening, and Cesar, to your point around patience, like learning how to garden takes patience. Learning how to like take care of your plants takes patience, and it's right, the sense of urgency of like, but why do I want things to grow so quickly, right? Like I'm asking myself these things while I'm gardening, like why? There really isn't like a real reason other than like because I just want tomatoes, right? Like, and so like how can I still honor the growth of like what I'm trying to like plant and harvest, right? So it's like it feels like it's a framework adjustment, and gardening has really helped me also, Cesar, to be patient with myself and others, right? Because like growth is really beautiful, and it's like making sure that like we have the framework to appreciate it as well, right? Okay. And then I think Monica, you shared values around belonging, caring, justice, transparency, and abundance, and authenticity. Yes, all beautiful values. So I'm going to stay in gallery mode since we're here already and kind of basically open it up to us. Like this is our time. Let's talk about if there's a fundraising strategy or goal you're interested in strengthening. I know that part of this session is related to San Diego gifts. Sharon, you can probably like confirm for me. We're leading up to end of the year, and we also know most gifts come in at the end of the year, right? Like I see it with all of our partners. We have a fundraising culture in the United States where like people are trying to give till like midnight, December 31st, right? And so like how, you know, let's just open it up. Are there strategies that you're like, hey, I've never done that before. Can someone give me some ideas on how you've done that? Or like, hey, I've done this. How do I strengthen this strategy in the future? I really just want to open it up to us so that we can help each other out, right? And so that all of San Diego is getting supported, at least through, you know, at the very least through our wisdom, right? Anything coming to mind? What are we thinking? Are y'all thinking about the San Diego Gives? Are we preparing for that or a version of that for later in the year?
So San Diego Gives, I'm not sure if everybody with us is participating in that, but which is totally fine. But that is right now it's like a year-round capacity building program for nonprofits. So it includes a lot of these webinars, et cetera. And then it culminates in an online giving campaign, which this year starts, I think, the middle of August. It's looking at like a 6-week window. I think it ends right after Labor Day. Right, so it's online giving, which is a little bit different for some organizations, and to really rely a lot on peer-to-peer and kind of that digital fundraising approach, and was also intended to help some of the real grassroots organizations that maybe don't have the infrastructure, you know, that others do, you know, with kind of a campaign like this. The trick of it is that, you know, things move so fast that you've got this in the end of the summer and early September, and then it seems like no sooner does that happen that you're turning around and it's time for like the year-end campaign. So I think, having been involved with it over the past few years, that seems to be one of the biggest conflicts that organizations have, is sort of like how to position that. And I guess, you know, and that balance of, you know, you need to be asking all the time. Yeah, and there's just a real pressure.
Ooh, thanks for sharing a little. Yeah, so thanks for sharing for the rest of us who don't know about San Diego Gives and the program and the initiative itself. But I mean, in kind of your comments, Sharon, I feel like I heard something that I think happens all year round. You have like competing fundraising opportunities, right? And like, how do you balance it, right? I don't know. Before I give my 2 cents, does anyone want to share kind of how they managed it in the past? Maybe what has been successful for them and their teams?
So I can offer up an example of what was successful for me for a social media campaign back in 2015. And then I can offer us potentially some advice on how to go from one campaign to the next. But we did a month-long social media campaign at an organization. It was their 10-year anniversary, and they had served 2,900 people. So our goal was to raise $10,000 in 29 days. So it was like a connection with numbers. And that's very daunting, especially if you don't have social media and you have no idea how to do that. But what we did was we went to 3 of our clients who were willing to let us record them. And at first we had a script of things we wanted them to say about how impactful the programs were. But it just started to sound really like just awkward and stilted, and it just didn't feel organic. So we just said, look, just tell us your story. And we just recorded them for 30 minutes or so, like 10 to 20 minutes, just then telling their story. And I was so blessed to have an intern who was trained in video editing. And so she was able to take those videos and cut them into like 1 or 2 minute snippets that talked about what it was like when they got their diagnosis, what it was like after the surgery, just very meaningful, impactful statements. And then from that, we were able to do a different video each day on social media. So there was a ramp up, like, hey, check out the videos, get these stories. And so then there was an opportunity for people every day to be engaged with different narratives. And then also we wanted to complement that with weekly emails to our constituents, just saying, hey, did you know this is happening? Just get the word out. So that was helpful, having that complement that. And then what I would recommend is, if you are doing San Diego Gives and you have a bunch of donors there, and if you're able to use a video campaign that they're engaged with, rather than asking them for money, saying, hey, thank you for your support, we really appreciate that, you were a big part of it. Can you please share this video with people in your network and help introduce people in your network to our organization for year-end campaign giving, so that they can feel empowered as a fundraiser rather than being asked for money again?
Thank you, Carlos. Yeah, right. So maybe was it you, Cesar, who asked like peer-to-peer fundraising strategies? Like, I feel like that's a nice tactic of like you know, you can maybe, you know, your full 12 months and what your team is planning to do, and like figuring out like what are we doing and when does it make sense to make an ask, right? Being a little strategic, and also like figuring out like who's in your network, and like beyond like a donation, can they help in another way in the future, right? And so thank you, Carlos, for like sharing some of those insights, recommendations. Anyone else? Yeah, what are we cooking up anything this year? Is anyone doing San Diego Gives? Are they trying to like, are you trying to integrate it maybe into your end of year giving? I would love to like, you know, help each other out so we could be strategic. Nothing, anything else? Any other fundraising goals? I mean, so who said it? Like, it's the end of my fiscal year. I'm starting to feel a little overwhelmed. However, it's a sort of like new chapter, new fiscal year. Are we like budgeting? Are we forecasting? Are we figuring out how much money we have? How much money we need?
You know, what I was going to say, because I think part of the issue too with, you know, the pressure that goes into fundraising, and some of the principles of community-centric fundraising, while like the principles are, they're beautiful. And sometimes it just seems they might be like a little aspirational because, you know, I think like the inherent reality of our jobs is that money has to come in to keep the place going, you know, is sort of like the basic. Now, or, you know, I mean, hopefully like you're not the only one doing that, but I think it can kind of feel like that. And so I think the other thing is that what kind of input do fundraisers have when the organization is coming up with the budget for the year? You know, so it's like kind of going back, because it's like, how can you know, you would want to prescribe to these principles and you want to live them, and yet you didn't have maybe the voice to say, okay, well, that budget is going to be reasonable. I mean, I even have it in some of my volunteer stuff where, you know, it's sort of like, oh, we're going to raise this amount of money. And it's kind of like, okay, like, you know, all right. It's sort of, I don't know. So anyway, it's just that, I guess, how do we get to a place where those who are fundraising also have a voice in determining the budget?
Yeah, isn't that huge? And right, and sometimes it's like, does anyone else kind of feel, I don't know if you're in a position now where you're like, I'm trying to figure out how to influence our budget, right? Like essentially it's like, the reality is like everyone is influencing each other in our teams, in our organization, right? Like each of us has our sort of like, even though we share a mission, there's still like, the reality is that there's still limitations, right? In how we do our work. So like from like how much money we have. But yeah, anyone, I mean, so I can tell you this. So when I work with partners, just to kind of start the conversation, maybe someone else has another example. Yeah, when folks even come to us with very ambitious fundraising goals, folks are like, hey, can you help me raise X amount of dollars? And then, you know, as we get to know them and their revenue model, we're taking a very close look at an organization's budget, right? And seeing like, where is money being allocated now, right? And having conversations around, okay, you know, does this budget feel okay? How are people feeling about, because right, wages, benefits are a big part of like our sector. It's like getting people paid to do incredible work. And sometimes, right, living into our values of like abundance or belonging, et cetera, it's in the conversations, especially around our budgets, that we can practice these values. And the reality is we're not going to be able to like live out the values 100% in every conversation, but if we can live them out over time, right? That's also like a real thing, right? And so when we're saying like, let's say for us at Masa, yeah, I'll tell you kind of how we do it. It's like if we value care and we want to ensure that people get paid well and have benefits and are not working more than 40 hours a week, what practices do we need to practice internally to be able to do that? So we're looking at, and I think same for nonprofits, it's like, how much work are we taking on, right? Like being very, very clear on like, these are our goals, these are our initiatives, and this is what we need to honor for our team to be able to like not only like serve our community, but like serve our team, right? So if folks are saying, I don't want to work more than 40 hours a week, we got to be mindful of how much work we're taking on and how ambitious our goals are. And then like when it comes to resources, right? Like, are we pricing out our services as best as we can, right? So I think that for me is always something I'm looking at when we're looking at grants, when we're looking at donations coming in, is are folks getting paid what, looking at like, right, we're going through inflation right now, right? Like we need to make sure that people feel good about working with us. And so it's like being reflective, what you're saying, Sharon, around like, right, like what are we doing now? What shifts do we need to make? Because all of that, it does influence our fundraising, right? And so it's hard, but honestly, it's a commitment. The reality, it just takes commitment to be able to lead with our values. And again, like we're not going to get it right every time, but like at least being committed to doing a little bit each time we're in these conversations, right? And so a big one for me is like when I'm working with EDs, especially, is like, is your staff happy? Like, are they getting what's like, because if your staff is not happy, we're going to deal with turnover, and that turnover impacts your programming, and that programming affects the reputation that you have in your community, and that reputation affects the conversations we're having with funders, right? So it's like, it's a constant, like everything is interconnected, right? And so like, are they happy? Are they not? How can we ensure that they're happy? And sometimes that means like, well, they need salary increases. And I know that that can be a huge process, but like that's on fundraising, right? It's like, okay, well, if that's something that we need to value this year, right, in our fundraising, then like that is a strategy that we need to look at more closely so that when we are funding, we're resourcing, we're looking for unrestricted dollars in this case, right? So that's a really long answer, and I know we can have a larger discussion, but I want to give a little bit of sorry, I can't speak because I'm at a library. As a world music organization, we present music and dance all year in schools, senior communities, and public spaces. We've never held a fundraising event, so I'm struggling with how to produce an event that isn't like all the others. Ooh, anyone have any ideas? Do you all do any event fundraising here? Anyone do any fundraising events?
I'll just chime in. I have to head out soon, but I'll real quick. At Interfaith last night, we held a fundraiser for a retirement party for a longtime employee of ours, Mary Farrow. So she was with Interfaith for 16 years, but she was very instrumental with the Providing Hope Fund that we have at Interfaith Community Services. So oftentimes our grants and our funding is stringent with what we can allocate resource towards to, and there not might be leeway for other things that come up. So the Providing Hope Fund allows our case managers to advocate for their clients and say, maybe our grant can't allocate funds for this, but we have a Providing Hope Fund that can. Oftentimes, those funds are very limited because it's spread out through the whole agency with 200 plus 150 plus case managers and all of their clients. So it's a struggle to get funds for that. So we had a little retirement party for her slash fundraiser. We partnered with a local jeweler, Jewels for a Cause, who donated some jewelry, and people were able to come out and bid. But most importantly, we leading up through the invitations and everything, we really stressed how important it was to our employee Mary this Providing Hope Fund, and that, you know, all donations to this fund would be appreciated. And we reiterated that in the days and weeks before the party through our phone calls and our emails and our messaging. So we we were able to get a good amount. We actually raised 25K the day before, just calling people and saying, you know, we're trying to do a little matching fund for Mary. And we had some good success with that. So you know, that's something that we did last night. It was really it was fun too. Of course, we had people share stories and talk about Mary and her impactful work with our community. But yeah, that's just something that we did, and I thought it was fun, you know. But just I think driving home the point that the importance of the mission to this person, drawing those connections to the mission, and how they're going to benefit everyone in the end.
Yes, thank you, Cesar, for sharing. And I want to be mindful because I want to get you out on time. Yeah, Monica, I think, wow, it's like when you're like, I've never done this before, that energizes me. And so I'm not sure if that energizes you, but I think, you know, I'm sure like Sharon, myself, others here, happy to connect on like what it might be possible. But I think for me, I'm always just a fan of like, well, folks in your community that might be doing something similar, to your point of like, I want to do something different, but taking the time to then at least acknowledge what are people doing to also inform like, what can you do differently? And these feelings of, I mean, again, going back to like the values that you shared of belonging and care and transparency, like, I think this is where you can get really creative, just kind of like how the sort of case study that I shared with you, they're sort of like leading value was generosity. And they opened up this like create like this brainstorming session with their fundraising committee on like, okay, you know, what's the message that we really want to resonate with our people, right? So like this is where I feel like get your creative people to be a part of your team, especially if you want to do something different. And then like explore like what have you enjoyed from maybe attending some of your peers' events? What would you like to experiment with, right? But I think it's like, especially when you want to do something different, like make sure you're also working with creative people, right? But yeah, I'm sure we're all happy to like help you kind of maybe even brainstorm a little bit around like a type of event that you could do in the future.
I was going to say the same thing. We could bring it to the Fundraising Fridays team too, if you want. Can put that on the agenda. But I mean, I think the most fun one I've ever been to was a prom. I think that was like, which, I mean, you're in the school, so I don't know if that could be something, but it was really, yeah, and it was like a throwback. It was like an 80s prom. And that's my era of that generation. So I loved it, but I think, you know, whatever decade, but I'm happy to brainstorm and we can also bring it up. So just in the
I'm excited for your new event, Monica. So excited to hear about it. Okay, let me bring you back into our PowerPoint so we can close this off. So we have 5 minutes left. I'll pass this. I hope you are feeling re-energized by this conversation. And hoping that, you know, community-centric fundraising principles are something you can reference in the future if you're looking for ideas. Yes, it's ambitious. And also I think it's going to be, you know, I think it's honestly just a way of like being in community that like you can look to so that with many examples. So know that it's a resource. We have a chapter here. Happy to be in further conversation with y'all. If you can, please let us know how we did. Maybe Sharon can also send you a link in the follow-up email. Your input is really important to us when we say like community-centered, right? We want to hear from you so that we can center these conversations in a way that are most helpful to folks. So value your input. And just some suggested next steps, right? Like just keep, right? Like this approach of like just keep learning, keep reflecting, keep sort of re-examining your practices depending on, especially the type of goals that you have laid out for yourself, and share with others kind of like what you're learning, maybe the best practices that you're using. And of course, like connect with us for any questions, ideas. Thank you, Sharon, for having us here and also giving, this conversation the opportunity to maybe move into Fundraising Fridays, right? Because again, this is what it's all about. So we can like talk to each other, collaborate, and just like, build off of one another. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Chantal. Really, this was such a, really lovely conversation. And it was, I think, for me, equally inspiring and motivating and also a bit relaxing. I don't know, you have a really nice way, you have just a lovely way of talking. And it's just a soothing, like it's all okay. So
yes, it is all okay, despite sometimes you're like looking at your numbers, right? But it is all okay. We have to channel Carlos. I remember Carlos said it. Like, it is all okay.
that's right.
But yeah, thank you for being a part of this space and for inviting me. And yeah, we're all here for each other. Thank you again, Sharon.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll be sharing the slides that we talked about and the recording link shortly. So
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you for
Bye.
sharing.